Muslim savages ran through the streets of Amsterdam, hunting down Jews, attempting to lynch them, throwing them in canals, uh, live streaming themselves, doing so, basically trying to be Hamas, but with not as much success. A different type of Jew hunt is happening in Amsterdam. The Hin Rajab Foundation, which we've talked about before, a foundation named after a girl who was killed most likely by Palestinian terrorists, but certainly 100% because of Palestinian terrorists, no matter who fired whatever killed her. This is an organization we've talked about, an organization hunting down Jews who were soldiers in the IDF and were in Gaza and hunting them down around the world. We talked about a month and a half ago about a similar incident in Brazil where an Israeli tourist had to escape Brazil and go back to Israel. The same thing happened in Amsterdam a few days ago. This is an organization based in Brussels, where much of Europe's ills come from. But yeah, this is a worrying situation, and of course, Jews can't really count on Europeans to defend them from those who wanna kill them, wanna hunt them down. I think historically that's accurate, and it's certainly accurate today. Um, Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginzberg. I'm joined by Daniel. Daniel, your initial thoughts on the story, and then we'll go through an article about it.
Well, I think the main point that people should take away from this episode is the fact that Europe has helped this. I mean, again, imagine the situation that pretty much many of the European nations are saying Israel is committing a genocide. And then the soldiers that are supposedly committing the genocide are traveling around Europe. What else would you expect that something like this? I mean, imagine if Russian soldiers right now were traveling all over Europe. You would see a similar reaction. And that is from this weird, I think, a separation from what we believe or what we say Israel is doing and what is actual application of law on the ground. Because again, on the face of it, we are saying Israel is committing genocide, and then we allow the soldiers to travel around Europe like nothing is happening. So I do not want to take sort of volition from the people who are doing this. It's still on you to actually think what is happening. But yeah, I mean, it shows the again this almost schizophrenic view that the Western nations right now have when it comes to Israel. Um, so this is what we get.
Yeah, first of all, nobody thinks Israel is committing genocide because that's not what thinking is. Like you don't come to this conclusion through a thought process. But they are saying it, and we talked about this yesterday. We talk about this frequently. If you want to redefine genocide, as many have said they want to, including Amnesty International, the Irish government, you would have to redefine it in a way that every side in every war in history is committing genocide. And then the word genocide means being a side in a war, because in terms of attempting to avoid civilian casualties, nobody has ever done as much as Israel is doing in this war. And this is not me advocating for it. I'm advocating strongly against it. I think this is unnecessarily costing Israeli lives, and it's costing Israel victory in this war, but that is a fact of the matter. Um, all right, thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Let's go through this article, which is from the Irish Times. So take that into account. The article is titled "Israeli Soldiers Flee Netherlands Following Accusations of Gaza War Crimes." Similar incidents are reported to have happened in 12 countries. Two young Israeli soldiers who arrived in Amsterdam last week were forced to hide out in their hotel and return to Israel after a pro-Palestinian group accused them of war crimes in Gaza and threatened to sue them through the Dutch courts. The two soldiers posted pictures on social media on Sunday showing themselves enjoying the city's sights. However, by Tuesday, they were back in Tel Aviv after they were advised not to go out in public, and their flights home were paid for by an Israeli insurance company. according to the Times of Israel, the insurer Passport Card has allocated $1 million to cover the cost of repatriating Israelis to avoid possible prosecution for alleged crimes during the war in Gaza, which followed the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. Okay, so yeah, luckily there are those who will, do what they can to protect these soldiers, and so far, as far as I can tell, none were arrested, right? But it's just a matter of time, and you have to wonder about these countries. I go back to the Netherlands again in terms of who's forming their current coalition. We talked about this around the attempted pogrom in Amsterdam. The people in coalition are supposedly the most pro-Israel in Europe, certainly when it comes to Geert Wilders, who, for all his flaws, is 100% pro-Israel. He keeps tweeting, Jordan is the Palestinian state. And so, and he is the his party has the majority within the coalition. So if even in the Netherlands, they've said they will arrest Netanyahu if he lands on their soil, and they are now going after soldiers who fought in Gaza. Remember, these soldiers are on the ground in Gaza so that Palestinian civilians won't die. They're not there to kill the terrorists. Killing the terrorists can be done from the air and could have been done. The war could have been over on October 7th or 8th by destroying Gaza, which is what, again, Israel should have done. But because of Israel's policies of trying to avoid civilian casualties, not only is this war taking forever, doesn't appear like victory is in sight, very much looks like however it ends, Hamas will still be in power, and it's causing damage to soldiers that shouldn't have been caused. The soldiers shouldn't be there. They should be there after the bombing, to get rid of the tunnels, and they would still be at risk, but way fewer soldiers would have died in a proper military operation, and way fewer soldiers would be under the threat of arrest because there would be less of a way to identify them had Israel done what we've been advocating for since October 7th and before.
Yeah, but also it's not like that would matter for the people who are out there hunting Jews. We know, during the last pogrom, it's not like all of them were IDF, or technically every single Israeli is a military target because they either were in the IDF or they might be in the IDF in the future. So everything is fair game from that point of view. But even then, even like I don't know if we know about these specific soldiers, if they did fought in Gaza, or many of the military roles are also sort of desk jobs, many different branches. Like it's all over the place. It's not like you're an IDF soldier, you were in Gaza. But again, it doesn't matter. We see, yeah, I mean, sort of bringing it back to the last pogrom. Again, they were just targeting Israelis. It doesn't matter if they think you have a role. You are Israeli. You are participating in genocide, in apartheid, in colonial occupational state. You are occupying the so-called Palestine, and this is everything that it's about. And there is no sort of logic you can find behind it, or there is no attempt to even make it make sense, or sort of for it to make sense. It's just we hate these people and we are trying to do something. We want to scare them. We want them to feel unsafe. Basically, the goal is for Jews to feel unsafe, and this is what we've seen since October 7th: the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of the so-called pro-Palestinian protest in pretty much every major city. The also the campus intifada, where many of the Jewish students and Jewish teachers were on purpose made to feel unsafe. This is what is happening, and yeah, unless something changes, unless something happens, this is going to continue. Unless the governments actually stand up and say, okay, this is not okay. Like even I myself, whenever on my jacket, I always wear an Israeli pin and also Ukrainian pin because I want it to be seen. But when I went to London, I took it down. I'm that that this is simply not something that you can feel safe about. Wearing Israeli pin and going into a lot more major cities.
Yeah, and it's important to remember things like, apartheid, genocide, all those accusations are used, by Western so-called human rights organizations, by Western media, by some Western politicians who are anti-Israel. It's not really a thing that the actual other side uses unless they're talking to Westerners. So, when the Muslims were about to go uh, attempt to lynch as many Jews as they could find in Amsterdam, they said we're going on a Jew hunt. They didn't say we're going to bring justice to war criminals who are, accused of apartheid, genocide, and so on. And we need to remember this also with the Hin Rajab Foundation. They do it kind of within the law, which maybe tells you something about the law. But the founder of Hin Rajab, Diab Abu Jaja, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I don't care. He's a terrorist. I mean, he went to fight for Hezbollah. He's an actual terrorist. Hezbollah does not use the kind of language we use in the West. They talk clearly, as do the Palestinians. They talk clearly about their goal of exterminating the Jews. That is the goal. There is no need to mince words unless you're sending your English language spokesperson out there. So and it's weird also to consider the fact that this guy is a known admitted terrorist, and he is able to run a foundation, a charity in Belgium. It tells you something about Belgium, as do a lot of other things. I mean, just a couple of days ago, a Belgian MEP was tried to get into Israel, but she is somebody who also wants Israel exterminated. She posts those Free Palestine things with the map of Israel, fully saying we want the one Jewish state in the world gone, replaced by the people who say they want to replace it. And you know, you only need to fill in the blanks of what they want to replace it with and how they propose to replace it. So yeah, it's not difficult to figure out who these people are, what they want, and what they're fighting for. And yet yeah, those in the West who are kind of uh both sidesing the issue and saying, yeah, oh, October 7th was terrible, but also there's now genocide in response. Uh, they also know what they're doing. They know who they're supporting, and if they don't, they're still guilty of acting without actually having the information necessary before you make a decision on what type of action you want to take.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's not hard to find out about who the guy is. Yeah, you could literally just go to the Wikipedia page, which I just quickly went through. And apparently, The Guardian has referred to him as Belgium's Malcolm X. So that's one way, I guess, of referring to the guy. But yeah, he joined Hezbollah. He moved to Belgium afterwards. I'm not sure if he got a full citizenship, but he basically has a right to stay in Belgium. And yeah, now he's apparently this is not even the first time he is on this sort of crusade for the soldiers. Apparently, he did something similar when it came to the Iraq War and the soldiers who fought in Iraq. So yeah, the goal is clearly to scare the people who are defending the nation. Again, any soldier, any IDF soldier is defending its nation, is defending its people, is fighting terrorists and savages, and the at least a little bit, even the Palestinian idea of killing Jews, and they should be scared because of that. They should be scared. They should be scared for their life. They should just stay in Israel. They should never travel anywhere else, or they might get arrested, get killed. Who knows? Um, so yeah, the clearly. the one idea that is going on here is fear. They want them to feel unsafe. Like it's hard to even draw like more sort of direct parallels between like 30s Germany and what's going on right now.
Yeah, interesting. The Guardian should compare him to Malcolm X. Malcolm X. I mean, they probably mean it favorably. Malcolm X was a racist and a criminal. So yeah, if that's the kind of role model you have, it's not surprising that you also admire terrorists who state very clearly, or at least have stated in the past, and certainly with their actions, that they want to kill all Jews. So, all right, let's read a bit more of this article. So the article continues. Similar incidents are reported to have happened in 12 countries. In Brazil last month, the Israeli embassy officials shepherded a soldier out of the country after a judge ordered police to open an investigation into alleged war crimes in Gaza. Israel's foreign ministry confirmed that it had liaised with the soldier's family and that officials had, quote, accompanied him throughout the event until his swift and safe departure from Brazil. The procedure appears to have been the same in the Amsterdam incident. In both cases, the soldiers were identified by the Hind Rajab Foundation, an organization based in Belgium that aims to document the actions of Israeli soldiers in Gaza and pursue justice for alleged war crimes. Among other data, the foundation gathers images and videos posted by Israeli soldiers, some of which show what appears to be abuse and humiliation of Palestinian prisoners. It says it verifies these posts where possible. Others have been verified by American media. Okay, let's pause there. First of all, yeah, any Israeli soldiers watching this, you should be very proud of what you do in Gaza, but do not post it on social media. Definitely not on accounts with your name. You're making yourselves targets of savages. It would be great if we lived in a war where, in a world where if you're fighting on the right side of a war against savages, you are celebrated. But that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where savages are celebrated. So protect yourself unless you never intend to go anywhere outside of Israel. And even then, you never know who in Israel will come to power or who in Israel will do what. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but stop it. Or post it without your name because yeah, we want to see that, but we also want you to be able to enjoy vacations from time to time. Uh, but yeah, anyway, thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, Europe is messed up now. Yeah, Europe is messed up historically. You know, it has its moments, but historically those are unfortunately few and far between, and it didn't take long for Europe to go back to its old ways, certainly when it comes to Jews, but also if you look generally, I mean, we talked about the German elections a few days ago about how much of the vote went to different parties who advocate different types of totalitarianism, all of which should scare you, not just the ones that you think are the totalitarianism that you won't approve of. You shouldn't approve of any totalitarianism. You will not be better off under such a regime. But yeah, that is very much the European way, unfortunately. Daniel.
Yeah, and when it comes to those idea of soldiers, you know, the second rule after don't commit a crime is don't record yourself committing a crime. And while now I don't know what specifically we are talking about here, but let's say when it comes to the treatment of prisoners, while I for the most part don't really care because you know once you have a nation that declares war on you and those soldiers have pretty much, especially the ones that crossed the border on October 7, have pretty much cannot claim any rights. And if all of them got killed, I wouldn't really care. The fact is, when it comes to international law, and which to some of it is even Israel signatory, there are certain standards when it comes to treatment of prisoners and when it comes to waging a war. And that is something you can get put on trial for, like, and possibly convicted. So yeah, while I think in many ways the sort of the moral right is definitely on the side of Israel and the idea of soldiers, when it comes to the so-called international law, right? There might be things that IDF or Israel does that do go against it, and that doesn't say much about Israel. I think that says much more about the idea of international law, because the only purpose is to stop you from defending yourself, or technically that shouldn't be the goal of it, but when it comes to the application, almost universally it's only used against the good countries defending themselves from the terrorists, and it's being used by the terrorists to their advantage. So, whatever the original concept of international law was, which I think was flawed from the start, if you really go into it, even the better interpretation of international law is clearly not what is going on here, and it's being just used to one, bash Israel; two, bash Israeli leaders like Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant; and three, bash Israeli soldiers or anybody who defends the nation.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, Israel shouldn't be signatory to any of this crap that has its soldiers' hands tied behind their back. So that should be step number one. And again, in certain situations, I hope soldiers do what's right, and you know they will be accused of war crimes for that, but those things should be done and should not be considered war crimes. But and actually, we're going to talk maybe on the reality show about some of the opportunities that might come about with Trump, perhaps for all the wrong reasons, but moving away from some of these evil bodies. But yeah, Israelis should look out. And actually, when we read the rest of this article, we'll see exactly who the other side here is. So it continues. The Israel Defense Forces has repeatedly ordered soldiers to stop sharing such images online. Yuval Kaplinsky, a former senior Israeli state lawyer, said, quote, "If a soldier does not record video clips of himself committing activities that are considered war crimes and does not announce himself engaging in such activities, then he should not worry about being arrested." I think he's wrong, but let's continue and then discuss it. According to Hindu Job Foundation legal advisor Harun Raza, the foundation advises anyone with information to share it with them privately. Quote, "That way we have time to put together reports which we can share with local officials, for instance, the public prosecutor's office in the Netherlands. In this particular case, however, there was unfortunately not enough time." Former executive director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, observed these cases should remind Israelis that war crimes are crimes of universal jurisdiction, meaning they can be prosecuted by any national court, even where there's no immediate link to the Gaza conflict. Okay, that's the article. Kenneth Roth still being around and talking is interesting. This guy is, of course, a paid by Qatar, but you know the things he does would be bad regardless of who he's paid by. But it is interesting. This is somebody who is on the payroll, or at least was on the payroll of a terrorist funding totalitarian regime, and the head of an organization called Human Rights Watch. So bear that in mind when these people use terms that would, would appeal to good people in the West if they were used correctly. Remember who these people are. Now, a couple of other points. Yeah, to the IDF spokesperson or legal or whoever it was, no, anything, if you post yourself even going the fact that you're going to be in Gaza, you will be targeted by these people. And the next quote shows it. We're asking people. That's what the person from the Henry Job Foundation says. We're asking people to share privately information. Again, this goes back to the Amsterdam pogrom, where uh, people working at the casino where Israelis were, working at hotels where Israelis stayed, told the terrorists where the Jews were so that they can come and hunt them down. And here they do the exact same thing. Who do you think they mean when they say share that privately? I mean, if you are working in a hotel, somebody checks in, they check in with their passport, you can see where they're from, you can if you don't see where they're from, but you see their full name, you might take a guess. So this is what this organization is calling for, and they could say, okay, well, let's just check it out if it's just anybody from Israel. Remember, this is an organization founded by a terrorist, an Islamic terrorist, who wanted to who fought to exterminate the Jews, and he hasn't changed his mind. So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is that much more to say. It's pretty clear what's happening here. It is Jew hunt. It is them trying to round up and get information and finding all Israelis, Jews they can get their hands on. So again, they might say give them to the courts, but when the courts themselves are corrupt, which I think any international court is inherently, at the very least, misguided and corrupt, then you are not pursuing justice. You are not pursuing law. Gestapo, or in my own country, the secret police, and you telling that your neighbor has pro-capitalist tendencies or anti-communist sympathies, you are not upholding law and justice. You are not, doing something good. You are trying to get people locked up for the good they are doing, for being something different. Now you're either like looking. Okay, you didn't froze up. You look like you froze up for a second. But hey, this is what's happening. I think that's a pretty much real good analogy. Like he is sort of like he is the Gestapo. He is the person sort of like saying, "Oh, I'm just giving people to the courts." But if injustice is gonna happen there, you are committing that injustice.
Yeah, I may have froze up because I opened an article for the reality show which follows, where we're going to be talking about the austerity measures at the UN. Like they're going through some terrible, terrible things, like having to lower the temperature in the building from 22 degrees to 21 degrees. I don't really know how that works. Oh, anyway, maybe in the winter it makes sense. But yeah, they're struggling. Yeah, and it's all Trump's fault. So even bad people can do good things, it turns out. Thank you, PC, for the last minute super chat. PC says 1938, 2025, only difference is the year. There's another difference, which is people today don't have the excuse of not having the historical reference of the Holocaust. They know where this leads, and they are doing it anyway, and which is all the more reason why we should take it seriously, realize this is everybody's war. You don't have to be a Jew to see yourself and understand that you are a target in this war. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everybody for watching. The reality show starts in a couple of minutes.